You know what's strange? The people who hurt us the most are the ones who once made us feel like we were finally safe. It doesn't start with cruelty. It starts with magic, with the way they look at you like you're everything they've ever wanted, like they see your soul, like maybe, just maybe, this time will be different, and you want to believe them. You do, because you're tired of being strong, tired of being careful. You want to rest in someone. So when they pull you close and tell you you're the one, when they listen so deeply it makes your chest ache with relief, you fall. Not because you're weak, but because you're human, because your heart still hopes. But over time, something shifts. The warmth disappears. The silence grows heavy. You start questioning things that used to feel solid. You shrink yourself to keep the peace. You overthink every word, every breath. You apologize when you've done nothing wrong. You look in the mirror and realize you don't even recognize the person staring back. And the worst part, they act like nothing's wrong. Like you're the one who's too sensitive, too emotional, too much. But here's the truth they never want you to find. Narcissists live in fear, not of you, not of being alone, but of being truly seen. Because if you see them clearly, the illusion breaks. And if the illusion breaks, they lose control. So they bury you in confusion, in guilt, in subtle blame. Not because you deserve it, but because deep down they're terrified you'll wake up. Terrified you'll remember who you were before them. In this video, we're going to talk about the secret fear narcissists carry in silence. The one thing they spend their whole lives hiding, because if you discover it, they can't keep you small anymore. If this speaks to something inside you, something quiet and aching, I want you to stay with me. And if you feel seen already, if something's stirring in your chest, take a breath and make sure you're subscribed to this channel. This space is here for you. For the you that's still learning to trust herself again. Let's begin. They don't start as monsters. That's what makes it so hard. You didn't walk into a storm. You walked into a garden. You were offered safety, admiration, even love. At first, it felt like being chosen, like someone finally saw all the pieces of you that others overlooked. The way your voice cracks when you talk about your childhood. The way your eyes dim when someone interrupts you too many times. They noticed, and you mistook that attention for care. But attention and care, they're not the same. Narcissists are drawn to light, not to warm themselves by it, but to feed on it. They sense your glow from a mile away, your empathy, your willingness to listen, your soft heart that gives people the benefit of the doubt, even when it costs you your peace. That's what they're really after, because underneath their charm is something hollow, something so fragile it can't bear to be touched. And your light, it threatens to expose that emptiness, so they hide it, behind perfection, behind stories of how they've been wronged, misunderstood, mistreated. They want you to see them as a victim of the world, so you'll never imagine they could be the villain in yours. And slowly, you begin to make room for their brokenness. You justify their outbursts, their withdrawal, their distance. You say things like, they've been through a lot, or they just don't know how to love. But what you don't realize is, that's exactly what they want. Because if you're busy understanding them, you'll never stop to ask why you feel so invisible. This is where their secret fear begins to show, because deep down, narcissists know the truth. They are not who they pretend to be. They fear being ordinary, forgettable, powerless. That's why they build a false self so carefully, one that's flawless, adored, always right. And they need you to reflect it back to them. The moment you stop doing that, the moment you start asking questions, pulling away, trusting your gut, they panic. That's when the punishment begins. Not always loud, often quiet, cold. They withdraw affection. They give you silence that cuts deeper than any scream. They make you feel like you did something wrong by simply existing with needs. You start to feel guilty for asking for basic things: respect, clarity, honesty, things that should never require begging. And you wonder, what happened to the person I met in the beginning? The truth? They were never real. The person you fell for was a mask, a mirror, a reflection of what they thought you wanted, what they needed to survive. And you were always real. That's why they needed you. But now you're beginning to see, beginning to feel the quiet terror underneath their anger. The fear that if you walk away, no one will ever see them that clearly again. That's what they're most afraid of. Not being left, but being seen. There's a moment, quiet and cruel, when you realize you've been loving a ghost. Not a person. Not really. But a version of someone they curated just for you. One that mirrors your dreams, your wounds, your deepest longing to be understood. It feels like fate, but it's design. Calculated. Intentional. And the most devastating part, you never had a chance to love them fully, because they never let you meet the real them. And now, that mask is cracking. You see it in the little things first. The way they dismiss your pain like it's an inconvenience. The way their kindness turns cold the moment you stop playing your part. The way you find yourself apologizing for things you didn't even do, just to bring back the person you thought they were. But they never come back, do they? Not really, because narcissists don't want closeness. They want control. Closeness would mean revealing their real selves, the broken, scared, unworthy part they've spent years hiding. The part that whispers, if anyone ever saw the truth, they'd run. So they build armor, beautiful armor, charisma, intelligence, success, seduction. And they use people like you to polish it, to maintain the illusion. Because if you keep believing in their perfection, they can keep pretending they aren't terrified of the emptiness inside. But when you finally stop feeding the illusion, they start to unravel. This is when the fear turns into rage. Not always loud rage. Sometimes it's subtle, calculated. Sometimes it's a smile that doesn't reach their eyes. A compliment laced with cruelty. A punishment disguised as distance. They punish you for waking up because your clarity is dangerous. Your healing is dangerous. Your decision to no longer abandon yourself just to keep them comfortable. That is their worst nightmare. Because now, you see, and once you see, they can't manipulate you the same way. They can't twist your kindness into obligation. They can't weaponize your loyalty to keep you in line. They can't dim your light to avoid confronting their own darkness. So they call you selfish, cold, difficult. They tell you you've changed, and you have. You've started asking hard questions. You've started setting boundaries. You've stopped trying to fix someone who doesn't want to be healed. You've started choosing yourself. But even as you do, there's still a part of you that aches, that misses the dream, that wishes it could have been real, that still wonders if maybe, just maybe, you were wrong. That's how deep the programming runs. That's how powerfully they shape your reality. Because narcissists don't just take your trust, they take your inner compass. But here's the truth. They fear the most more than exposure, more than abandonment. You were never broken. You were manipulated into believing your softness was a flaw, that your empathy was weakness, that your intuition was paranoia. You were gaslit until you couldn't hear your own voice anymore. But that voice, it never left. It's been whispering all along, in the quiet moments, in the discomfort, in the questions you weren't allowed to ask. And now, it's growing louder. That voice is your truth. And it scares them. Because the moment you listen to it, you become untouchable. You become dangerous the moment you stop needing their version of love. Not bitter, not cruel, just awake. And there is nothing more terrifying to a narcissist than someone who no longer dances for their approval. Because once you stop needing to be chosen, you start choosing yourself. And they can't stand that. They can't stand not being the center of your orbit. They can't stand your peace because they don't know how to find their own. You may think they don't feel fear, but they do. It lives under every carefully crafted mask. It shows up when you stop reacting, when you start observing instead of explaining, when you no longer chase their crumbs, or beg them to come back, or offer forgiveness before they've even apologized. That fear, their deepest fear, is that you'll remember who you are without them, that you'll wake up to the truth. They never had the power. You gave it to them, and now you're taking it back. This is the part where they'll try to win you again. The sweet phase, the sudden warmth, the regret. They'll say everything you ever wanted to hear, like they've finally realized what they lost, like they've changed. Like this time, it will be different, but look closely. That apology, it's still about them. That affection, it's still conditional. That change, it only lasts as long as your compliance. They don't miss you. They miss the reflection of themselves you used to hold up. The way you used to make them feel like someone worth loving without them ever having to do the work. They miss their mirror, not your soul. And I know that's hard to hear. I know it breaks something tender in you. Because you loved them honestly, fully. You would have given everything, if only they'd asked from a place of truth. But they couldn't, because truth means vulnerability. And vulnerability, to someone who lives in fear, feels like death. So they lie, not just to you, but to themselves, about who they are, what they feel, what they're capable of. And you stop believing the lies. You start returning to yourself, to the parts they told you were too much, too sensitive, too needy. You reclaim your voice, shaky as it is. You remember your worth, even if you still question it sometimes. You start making peace with the fact that it wasn't love that hurt you. It was the absence of it, dressed in its clothing. And when you begin to heal, when you begin to rise from the confusion, there's a stillness that enters your life. Not because the pain is gone, but because you're no longer abandoning yourself to escape it. You sit with it now. You hold your own heart, and maybe for the first time you whisper, I deserved more than that. You did. And no matter how much they try to rewrite history, manipulate the narrative, or make you the villain in their story. You know what happened. You lived it, and now you're surviving it. More than that, you're coming back to life, and they know it. That's what keeps them awake at night. Not your anger, not your silence, but your glow returning. Because when someone like you begins to heal, when your eyes clear and your voice steadies, you stop being someone they can manage. You stop being supply. The secret fear narcissists never want you to discover, Carl Jung, a mirror of everything they've refused to face. Your happiness without them shatters the story they tell themselves, that they were the best you could ever have, that you're lost without them, that no one else could love you like they did. But you begin to realize something that changes everything. You don't want a love that makes you feel anxious, that makes you question your worth, that gives and withholds based on your obedience. You want a love that feels like home, and they were never that. They were a test, a mirror, a storm that forced you to find your own shelter. And as painful as it was, as much as it wrecked you, it also revealed you, because you survived what was designed to confuse you, to shrink you, to make you believe that the only way to be loved was to disappear into someone else's need. But not anymore. Now, you remember the truth. A truth they hoped you'd never discover, that they didn't break you. They just distracted you from yourself, that their love wasn't real but yours was. That everything they feared, your intuition, your boundaries, your voice, is everything that makes you powerful. And they will feel that loss. Not because they lost you, but because they lost the version of themselves that only you could create for them. And that version disappears the moment you stop believing in it. So let them twist the story. Let them pretend. Let them say whatever they need to say to keep themselves from facing their own reflection. It's not your job to fix their soul. It never was. Your job is to come home to your own, to rebuild what they tried to tear down, to reclaim every part of you that you once offered in desperation, hoping it would be enough to finally feel loved. You were always enough. They just needed you to forget that, because your remembering was the one thing they couldn't control. But you're remembering now, and that is what they fear most. Because once you return to yourself, once you stand in your light without asking for permission, you become untouchable. Not because you're hardened, not because you're closed, but because you finally know what your love is worth, and you'll never again give it to someone who fears it. There's a quiet power in choosing yourself after being taught that your worth depended on someone else's gaze. It doesn't come with fireworks or grand declarations. It comes in the softest moments. The morning you wake up and your first thought isn't about them. The night you realize you no longer need to explain your pain for it to be valid. The hour you spend alone and feel peace instead of panic. That's what they couldn't take from you. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't destroy your capacity to love. They couldn't extinguish your ability to hope. And they couldn't erase the truth that lives deep inside your body, the knowing that love is not meant to hurt like that. Real love doesn't punish. It doesn't silence. It doesn't make you beg for clarity or twist your words until you start doubting your own reality. Real love sees you, holds you, makes space for your emotions without turning them into weapons. But they weren't capable of that, not because you were too much, but because they were too afraid. Afraid to be known, afraid to be soft, afraid that if you saw their true self, you'd walk away. So they hid behind control, behind charm, behind the ever-shifting rules of how to earn their love. But what they didn't expect was that one day, you'd stop playing. That one day, the ache in your chest would grow louder than your fear. That one day, you'd realize it's not your job to rescue someone who keeps drowning you. And when that day came, they lost something they never truly valued until it slipped away: your energy, your warmth, your belief in them. They lost their anchor, the steady presence you gave even when you were crumbling inside. They lost the person who saw the good in them when even they couldn't. And now, they're left with the emptiness they tried to hide behind you. But that emptiness, it's theirs to carry, not yours to fix. You have your own healing to do, your own soul to tend to, and that healing won't always be graceful. Some days you'll miss them. Not the pain, but the dream, the illusion of love, the version of the relationship you kept hoping would become real. Let yourself grieve it. Let yourself cry over what could have been, because mourning a lie still breaks the heart. But don't stay there, because every tear you shed, every boundary you draw, every truth you speak, it's building something new, a version of you who doesn't need to be rescued, who doesn't bend just to be chosen, who doesn't make herself small to keep someone else from leaving. You are not too sensitive. You are not too intense. You are not too much. You are simply not made for shallow love. And deep down they knew that. That's why they tried so hard to convince you otherwise. Because if you ever realized how powerful your heart is, how sacred your love is, they'd never have access to it again. And they won't, because you've remembered. And once you do, you never forget. So here you are, still standing, maybe quieter than before, maybe bruised in places no one can see. But you're here. And that means something, because the version of you that gave everything just to be seen, that version was never weak. She was loyal. She was hopeful. She believed in love with her whole heart, even when it hurt. But this version of you, she's sacred. She's the one who came out of the fire, who looked at the ashes and said, I can start again. The one who no longer waits for someone to choose her, because she's already chosen herself, and they will feel it. Not just the absence of your presence, but the absence of your belief in them. Because for people like that, being adored is oxygen. They live for it. And when you take it away, they suffocate. But you breathe easier. You move through the world softer, but stronger. You see through the charm now. You recognize the games. You know that silence can be a weapon, and that I love you means nothing if it costs your dignity. You no longer confuse pain with passion, chaos with chemistry, or control with care. You've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is leave, that saving someone else is not your path to salvation, that giving everything doesn't make them stay, it only makes you disappear. And maybe that's the final wound, the hardest truth to accept, that some people never wanted to love you. They only wanted to use your love to feel better about themselves. But that's not your shame to carry. It never was. You were real. You showed up. You gave deeply. And that is still something to be proud of, even if they didn't see it, even if they never said thank you, even if they tried to make you believe you were the problem all along. You weren't. You were simply the light that exposed their shadows, the mirror they couldn't bear to look into, the softness that reminded them of everything they couldn't touch inside themselves. So they ran, or raged, or ruined, but none of that changes who you are. And the more you heal, the more you realize they didn't destroy you. They revealed you. They forced you to find the parts of yourself they tried to bury. And now, those parts are rising, gentle, radiant, unapologetic. So let them fear your healing. Let them fear your voice. Let them fear your joy. Because the truth is, they were never afraid of losing you. They were afraid of you finding yourself. And now that you have, you're free. Thank you for letting me hold this space with you. If this spoke to your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel and come back anytime your light feels dim. You are not alone here. You never were.